Captain Sarah Chen stood in the grand hall of the Zaarthian palace, trying not to stare. Everything around her was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The walls were made of some kind of living crystal that changed colors as the alien nobles moved past. The ceiling stretched so high she couldn't see the top, just endless purple mist that glowed softly. The Zaarthians themselves were even more impressive. They looked like insects, but elegant ones, with long limbs and bodies covered in shells that shimmered like oil on water. They didn't speak with their mouths. Instead, patterns of light danced across their bodies, and the translator device in Sarah's ear turned those patterns into words. Sarah had been preparing for this mission for 2 years. Earth had finally been invited to join the Galactic Council, but only if they could make a good impression on the Zaarthians. These aliens were old, powerful, and not very impressed with humanity. Most of the galaxy saw humans as loud children who had just learned to leave their solar system. Queen Zelnara sat on a throne that seemed to be made of frozen light. She was young for a Zaarthian queen, barely 30 cycles old, which was like being in her 20s for a human. Her shell was a deep blue color, brighter than the other nobles. She had been the one to invite humans here, which had made many of her advisors angry. "Captain Chen," the queen's patterns said through Sarah's translator, "your people fascinate us. You are so short-lived, yet you reach for the stars with both hands. Tell me, what drives humans to explore?" Sarah smiled. She had practiced this answer. "Curiosity, Your Majesty, and hope. We always believe there's something better just beyond the horizon." The queen's patterns shifted into what the translator said was amusement. "Optimism. How refreshing. My people have seen 1,000,000 sunrises. Sometimes we forget why they matter." For 3 days, Sarah and her small team had been meeting with the queen and her court. The meetings were going well, too well, according to Sarah's second-in-command, Lieutenant James Park. He worried when things seemed easy. He was right to worry. On the 4th day, during a ceremonial feast in the Great Hall, everything went wrong. Sarah was watching the Zaarthian dancers, trying to understand their movements, when the lights suddenly changed. Instead of the soft purple glow, harsh red light flooded the room. Alarms screamed. The translator in Sarah's ear started making horrible feedback sounds. She ripped it out and looked around. The Zaarthian nobles were scattering, their light patterns flashing in what could only be panic. "Captain!" James grabbed her arm. "We need to go now." "What's happening?" "The palace is in lockdown. Someone's released some kind of gas into the ventilation system." Sarah's environmental suit started beeping. The sensors on her wrist showed the air composition changing rapidly. The oxygen was dropping, replaced by something that looked like sulfur dioxide mixed with other compounds. "It's not dangerous to us," James said, reading the same data. "But to them..." He didn't need to finish. Sarah looked around and saw Zaarthians collapsing. Their shells were changing color, from bright blues and greens to dull grays. They were dying. "Everyone to the ship," Sarah ordered her team. "Full environmental seals." Her team of 6 humans ran for the exit, their suits protecting them from the gas. The palace corridors were chaos. Zaarthian guards ran past them, trying to help the nobles. Sarah heard weapons fire somewhere ahead. "It's a coup," James panted as they ran. "Someone's trying to kill the queen and make it look like we did it." They reached the landing pad where their small diplomatic ship waited. The ship's AI, Marcus, had already sealed all the doors and started the engines. "All personnel accounted for except Captain Chen," Marcus announced as they climbed aboard. Sarah stopped at the airlock. "Where's the Queen?" "Captain, we need to leave," James said. "This isn't our fight." "Where is she?" Sarah looked back at the palace. Through the crystal walls, she could see Zaarthians lying on the floor. Some were still moving, their light patterns weak and flickering. Marcus answered. Her Majesty's last known location was the throne room. Captain, I must advise immediate departure. The rebel forces are approaching our position. Sarah made a choice that she knew would probably ruin her career. She grabbed a spare oxygen tank from the emergency supplies. Take off without me if you have to, she said. I'm going back. Sarah, no! James grabbed her arm. That's suicide. She's probably already dead. Sarah pulled her arm free and checked her suit's seals. You know why I can't do that? James's face went pale. He knew her history. 5 years ago, Sarah had been a Marine Corps squad leader. She'd lost her entire team in a combat situation when she'd followed orders to retreat instead of going back for them. The guilt had nearly destroyed her. Humans don't leave people behind, Sarah said quietly. Not even aliens we just met. Before James could stop her, Sarah jumped out of the airlock and ran back toward the palace. The corridors were filling with the toxic gas now. Sarah's suit kept her safe, but visibility was getting worse. Bodies lay everywhere. She tried not to look at them as she ran. The throne room was on the upper level. Sarah took the stairs 3 at a time, her human endurance giving her an advantage. Za'arthians were individually fragile compared to humans. They relied on their collective strength and advanced technology, not physical toughness. She found the throne room doors sealed. The control panel was dead. Sarah looked around and saw a ceremonial weapon mounted on the wall. She grabbed it and smashed the panel until the doors opened manually. Inside, the scene was worse. Dozens of Za'arthians lay motionless. Their shells were all gray now, their light patterns completely dark. But on the throne, one figure still glowed. Barely. Queen Zelnara's patterns were so dim that Sarah almost missed them. The Queen's breathing apparatus had been damaged, probably in the initial panic. She was suffocating in the poisoned air. Sarah ran to her. The Queen's eyes, compound and multifaceted, focused on her with difficulty. Captain? The Queen's patterns were so faint the translator could barely read them. You came back? I'm getting you out of here, Sarah said. She knew the Queen couldn't understand her without the translator working properly, but she said it anyway. Sarah lifted the Queen in her arms. Za'arthians were light, much lighter than humans. Their shells were strong but hollow, designed for a low-gravity world. The Queen weighed maybe 90 pounds. Behind her, Sarah heard weapon fire getting closer. The rebels were coming. She looked down at the dying alien in her arms, then at the door where armed hostiles were approaching. Hold on, Your Majesty, Sarah whispered. We're not done yet. She ran for the secondary exit, carrying a Queen through corridors filled with poison gas, with rebels closing in behind her. Sarah's lungs burned as she ran through the palace corridors. Queen Zelnara was light in her arms, but Sarah had been running for 10 minutes straight. Even with her environmental suit helping regulate her body temperature, she was sweating hard. The Queen's light patterns were almost completely dark now. Only the faintest flicker showed she was still alive. Sarah didn't know much about Za'arthian biology, but she knew that when their lights went out completely, they were dead. Marcus, Sarah gasped into her suit's communication system. I need a route out of here. The ship's AI responded immediately. I have hacked the palace systems, Captain. However, the situation is complicated. Rebel forces control the main exits. Your best option is to reach the medical bay on level 3. It has emergency supplies that might stabilize Her Majesty. How do I get there? Turn left at the next junction. Be advised, I detect 8 hostiles between your position and the medical bay. Sarah turned left and nearly ran into a group of Za'arthian guards. She raised her weapon with one hand while holding the Queen with the other. Don't shoot, one of the guards said. The translator was working again now that Sarah was away from the worst of the gas. I am Commander Krixtal, Royal Guard. What have you done to our Queen? The commander was bigger than most Za'arthians, with a shell that was dark green and covered in scars. His light patterns showed anger and confusion. "I didn't do this," Sarah said quickly. "I'm trying to save her. The gas that's killing your people doesn't hurt humans. I went back to get her out." Krixtal's patterns shifted. He was analyzing her words, trying to decide if she was telling the truth. His weapon was still pointed at Sarah. "Why would a human risk her life for our queen?" he asked. "Because she's dying and I can help," Sarah said simply. "Look, you can shoot me or you can help me get her to the medical bay. But decide fast, because she doesn't have much time." The queen stirred weakly in Sarah's arms. Her patterns flickered just enough to form a few words. "Krixtal. Trust her." That was all the commander needed. He lowered his weapon. "This way, my guards will clear the path." They moved as a group through the palace. Krixtal and his 4 remaining guards knew the palace better than Sarah did. They avoided the areas where rebels were fighting loyalist forces, but they couldn't avoid every conflict. At a major intersection, a group of rebels spotted them. Energy weapons fired, bright blue bolts that hissed through the air. One of Krixtal's guards went down, his shell cracked, and his lights going dark. Sarah ducked behind a pillar, still holding the queen. She returned fire with her sidearm, the old-fashioned human ballistic weapon surprising the rebels. They were used to energy weapons that announced themselves with a charging sound. Sarah's gun just clicked and bullets flew. 2 rebels fell. The others retreated. "Impressive," Krixtal said. "Your weapons are primitive but effective." "We make do," Sarah said. They reached the medical bay. The door was sealed, but Krixtal had the access codes. Inside, the room was full of equipment Sarah didn't recognize. Everything was designed for Zaarthian biology, which was completely different from human biology. "What does she need?" Sarah asked, laying the queen carefully on an examination table. Krixtal's patterns showed desperation. "Her respiratory system is shutting down. She needs purified methane and nitrogen compounds, but our supplies were in the main storage area. The rebels destroyed it." "Marcus," Sarah called, "can you scan the medical bay? Find me anything that might help." The AI's voice came through her suit speakers. "Scanning. Captain, there are emergency atmospheric canisters in the storage locker, 3rd cabinet from the left. They contain methane-nitrogen mixtures used for emergency surgeries." Sarah found the canisters. They were small, maybe the size of a fire extinguisher. The labels were in Zaarthian script, which her suit translated. "I need to build a breathing device," Sarah said, thinking fast. "Krixtal, what does your species use for emergency respiration?" The commander showed her a device that looked like a mask connected to a small tank. Sarah studied it, her engineering training kicking in. She'd worked on life support systems in the military. The principles were the same, even if the species was different. Her hands moved quickly, disconnecting tubes, rerouting valves, and connecting the emergency canister to the breathing mask. It was crude, held together with medical tape and prayer, but it might work. "This is insane," Krixtal said. "You're inventing Zaarthian medical equipment from scratch." "I'm improvising," Sarah corrected. She placed the mask over the queen's breathing ports. "Come on, Your Majesty. Breathe." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the queen's patterns flickered. They were still dim, but they were getting brighter. Her chest began to move in a more regular rhythm. "It's working." Krixtal's patterns showed amazement. "By the old stars, it's actually working." Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief, but only a moment. "Marcus, what's our situation?" "The rebels have surrounded the human ship. Lieutenant Park reports they are holding position but cannot take off without drawing fire. The rebels are demanding they surrender you and the Queen. Tell James to hold tight. We're coming." Sarah picked up the Queen again. The breathing device was working, but Zelnara was still weak. She needed proper medical care, not Sarah's emergency repairs. They fought their way toward the landing pad. More rebels appeared. More of Krixtal's guards fell. By the time they reached the final corridor, only Sarah, Krixtal, and one other guard remained, carrying their wounded queen. Through the windows, Sarah could see her ship. The landing pad was surrounded by rebel forces. At least 50 armed Za'arthians had weapons trained on the small human vessel. "We'll never make it through that," Krixtal said. Sarah activated her communicator. "James, I'm at the north entrance to the landing pad. I have the queen. She's alive but critical." "Sarah, there are too many of them. If you come out, they'll kill you all." "Then I guess you'd better provide some covering fire," Sarah said. "You're crazy. I've been told that before." Sarah looked at Krixtal. "When I run, you run. Don't stop for anything. Get the queen to the ship." "What about you?" the commander asked. Sarah smiled grimly. "Humans are good at running. It's practically our superpower." She burst through the door at full sprint, carrying the queen. Energy weapons fire lit up the air around her. Krixtal and his remaining guard ran beside her, their weapons returning fire. From the ship, Sarah's crew opened the airlocks and provided covering fire. James was screaming orders, coordinating defensive patterns. Sarah's legs pumped. Her suit's systems were redlining, warning her about overheating, but she didn't slow down. 50 meters, 40, 30. An energy bolt grazed her shoulder. Her suit's armor absorbed most of it, but pain shot down her arm. 20 meters. She could see James in the airlock, reaching out. 10 meters. She jumped, practically throwing herself and the queen into the ship. Krixtal and his guard tumbled in behind her. James hit the airlock control. "Go!" Sarah screamed. "Marcus, take off now!" The ship lifted. Energy weapons hammered the hull, but the shields held. They climbed through the poisoned atmosphere of the palace, breaking free into the clean air above. Inside the airlock, Sarah collapsed, still holding the queen. She looked down at Zelnara's face. The queen's patterns were stronger now. They formed words. "Why did you come back for me, human?" Sarah didn't have the breath to answer, but she knew the question would haunt them both. The medical bay of the human ship was not designed for alien royalty. It was a small room with 2 beds, basic equipment, and supplies meant for human injuries. Now it held a dying Za'arthian queen, and Sarah was desperately trying to keep her alive. Dr. Lisa Martinez, the ship's medical officer, was a talented surgeon. She had trained for every possible human emergency, but this was not a human emergency. "Her biochemistry is completely different," Lisa said, studying the readings on her tablet. "I can't even tell if these numbers are good or bad. For all I know, her heart rate could be too fast or too slow." Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead. They had been working on the queen for 3 hours. "Krixtal, what's normal for her species?" The Za'arthian commander stood in the corner, his patterns dim with worry. "Her core temperature should be lower, and her resonance frequency is wrong. She's dying, Captain Chen." "Not on my ship, she's not," Sarah said firmly. She had sent a message to Earth asking for help, but the response had been unhelpful. The government was more worried about the political situation than one alien's life. Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council had sent a direct order: surrender the queen to Za'arthian authorities immediately. Sarah had deleted that message without responding. Queen Zelnara stirred on the medical bed. Her eyes opened, those strange compound eyes that reflected light like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Her patterns were weak but visible. "Captain Chen," the translator converted her patterns into soft words. "You should not have come back for me." Sarah pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "You asked me that before. Want to know the answer?" "I do not understand your kind. The risk you took makes no logical sense." "Maybe not," Sarah admitted. "But humans don't really operate on pure logic. We have this idea. Back on Earth, there's an African philosophy called Ubuntu. It means a person is a person through other people. You're connected to everyone around you. The Queen's patterns shifted in confusion. But I am not a person to you. I am an alien, a different species entirely. You're a person who needed help, Sarah said simply. That's enough. She found herself talking more than she had planned. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe the Queen just had that effect on her. Sarah told her about the squad she'd lost 5 years ago, how she'd followed orders to retreat, how she'd heard them calling for help on the radio as they died, how that moment had defined every choice she'd made since. I couldn't save them, Sarah said quietly, but I could save you. And I did. That's all that matters to me. Zelnara was quiet for a long moment. Then her patterns formed careful words. My people do not think this way. We value the collective over the individual. One Za'arthian life means little compared to the survival of our society. That is why the rebels could release the poison. They were willing to sacrifice individuals for their political goals. That's horrible, Sarah said. Is it, or is it practical? The Queen's patterns took on a questioning tone. My advisors thought I was foolish to invite humans to our world. They said your kind was too emotional, too attached to individuals to ever understand galactic politics. Maybe they were right, Sarah said. But I'd rather be emotional and save lives than be practical and watch people die. The Queen's patterns shifted into what Sarah was learning to recognize as thoughtfulness. I pushed for the alliance with humanity precisely because of this difference. My people have grown cold over the millennia. We have forgotten what it means to value a single life. When I saw your species' history, how you fight for each other, how you mourn your dead, I thought perhaps you could teach us something we had lost. Before Sarah could respond, Marcus's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we have a situation. The Galactic Council has issued a statement. Play it. A holographic display appeared above the medical bed. A counselor from the Kretesh species, a bird-like alien with golden feathers, spoke in formal tones. Captain Sarah Chen of Earth has been declared a war criminal. She stands accused of kidnapping Queen Zelnara during a legitimate governmental transition. All species are required to assist in her capture and the safe return of the Za'arthian monarch. The message continued. But Sarah stopped listening. She looked at Crixtal. Legitimate governmental transition? They're calling the coup legitimate? The rebels control the palace, Crixtal said, his patterns dark with anger. They control our communications. They can tell the galaxy whatever story they want. Another message came in, this time from Earth. Sarah's superior officer appeared on screen, his face stern. Captain Chen, you are ordered to surrender Queen Zelnara to Za'arthian authorities immediately. Your actions have jeopardized humanity's position in the galactic community. Comply at once or face court-martial. Sarah looked at the message, then at the Queen lying weak in the medical bed. Marcus, prepare a response, she said. Captain? The AI sounded uncertain. Tell Earth that I will get the Queen to safety before I worry about politics. If they want to court-martial me after that, fine. But I'm not handing her over to the people who tried to kill her. Sarah, that's career suicide, James said from the doorway. He had been listening. They'll lock you up. You'll never command a ship again. I know, Sarah said calmly. Send the message, Marcus. James stepped into the room. His face was conflicted. I reported you, you know. When you ran back into the palace, I sent a message to command saying you disobeyed orders. I know. You were doing your job. I was wrong, James said quietly. I see that now. What are your orders, Captain? Sarah stood up and walked to the star map display. Crixtal, are there loyalist forces anywhere? Anyone who's still fighting for the Queen? The commander's patterns brightened slightly. Yes, General Vexal commands a fleet in the Outer Rim. He was away during the coup, but he's 3 systems away. And the Queen, she may not have 3 days. Sarah studied the map. Between here and Loyalist space were multiple checkpoints, patrol routes, and now probably bounty hunters looking to collect a reward. Then we'd better move fast, she said. Marcus, plot a course. James, get the crew ready for combat. Crixtal, I need you to teach me everything you know about Zaarthian tactics. Captain, the Queen's weak patterns interrupted. You cannot do this. The risk is too great. Sarah turned back to her. You asked me why I came back for you. Here's the real answer. Because someone needed to. Because it was the right thing to do. And because humans? We're really stubborn about doing the right thing, even when it's stupid. The Queen's patterns shimmered with something that might have been amusement or might have been hope. Your species is very strange, Captain Chen. Yeah, Sarah smiled. We get that a lot. She looked at her crew. James, who had reported her but was now standing with her. Lisa, who was working overtime to understand alien biology. Marcus, the AI who had hacked a foreign palace to help her. And Crixtal, an alien who had chosen to trust a human he'd just met. They were going to try something impossible. They were going to cross 3 systems of hostile space with a dying queen and the entire galaxy hunting them. But Sarah had made her choice. She wasn't leaving anyone behind. Not her crew, not the Queen. Not even her own principles. All right, people, she said. Let's get our Queen home. In the medical bed, Zelnara's patterns glowed just a little bit brighter. The first blockade appeared on their sensors 6 hours into the journey. A Zaarthian warship, 3 times the size of Sarah's diplomatic vessel, sitting directly in their path. They're hailing us, Marcus reported, demanding we stop for inspection. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The warship was powerful, with weapons that could cut through their shields in seconds. But it was also slow, built for strength rather than speed. Crixtal, would they really fire on a ship carrying their queen? The commander's patterns were grim. The rebels have declared her a traitor. Yes, they will fire. Sarah studied the display carefully. The warship was positioned near a nebula, a cloud of space dust and gas that sensors couldn't penetrate well. It was good tactics. They could hide reinforcements in there. But it also gave Sarah an idea. Marcus, how close can we get to that nebula before the warship intercepts us? Approximately 4,000 kilometers. But Captain, flying into a nebula is dangerous. Navigation is nearly impossible. Nearly impossible is better than definitely impossible, Sarah said. James, reroute all power to engines. Lisa, make sure the Queen is secured. This is going to get rough. The ship accelerated. The warship responded immediately, moving to intercept. Warning shots flashed past their hull. They're charging main weapons, Marcus warned. Not yet, Sarah whispered, watching the distance tick down. 3,000 kilometers to the nebula. The warship was turning, bringing its main guns to bear. Captain, James started. Not yet. 2,000 kilometers. The warship fired. Energy beams cut through space toward them. Now, Sarah shouted. Full evasive straight into the nebula. The ship dove and twisted. The energy beams missed by meters. They plunged into the nebula, and suddenly everything went dark. The sensors couldn't see anything through the thick dust. I've lost them on scanners, Marcus said, but I've also lost our navigation. That's okay. They lost us too, Sarah said. She was flying blind now, using only basic inertial guidance. The warship was too big to follow them in here safely. They emerged from the other side of the nebula an hour later. The warship was far behind, unable to track them. One down, Sarah said, but the Queen was getting worse. Lisa reported that Zelnara's vital signs were dropping. The improvised breathing apparatus was failing. They needed proper medical supplies, but those were still 2 systems away. The second blockade was worse. a trading station that sat at the junction between systems. Every ship had to pass through here or take a week-long detour. "The station has been notified to watch for us," Marcus said. "They won't let us pass." "Then we don't ask permission," Sarah said. "Crixtal, come with me. James, you have the bridge." Sarah and the Zyarthian commander took a shuttle to the station, pretending to be traders. Sarah wore civilian clothes and had disabled her military ID. Crixtal pretended to be her business partner. The station was crowded, full of dozens of different species, all trading goods and information. Sarah kept her head down and moved quickly toward the medical supply section. That's when someone recognized Crixtal. "That's the Queen's Guard," a bounty hunter shouted. "There's 1,000,000 credits on his head." Chaos erupted. The bounty hunter drew a weapon. Crixtal's patterns flashed in alarm. Sarah didn't hesitate. She grabbed a cargo container and threw it at the hunter, then ran. More hunters appeared, drawn by the commotion. Sarah and Crixtal fought their way through the station, using cargo as cover and their knowledge of the layout to stay ahead of their pursuers. "This was a terrible plan," Crixtal said as energy bolts flew past them. "It was a great plan until we got recognized," Sarah shot back. They reached the medical supply shop and Sarah simply smashed through the door. The owner, a blob-like alien, started to protest until Sarah threw a credit chip at him. "Emergency purchase," she shouted, grabbing everything she could carry. Zyarthian medical supplies, the kind the Queen needed. They ran back to the shuttle with half the station chasing them. Sarah sealed the door and launched before the hunters could stop them. Energy fire pinged off the shuttle's shields as they raced back to the ship. "Did we get what we needed?" James asked as they docked. "Yes," Sarah gasped. "Lisa, get these to the Queen now." The doctor rushed the supplies to medical. Sarah collapsed in her command chair, exhausted, but there was no time to rest. They were approaching the third and final blockade. This one was different. It was the Kritesh fleet, the bird-like aliens who had declared Sarah a war criminal. They were neutral parties, which made them dangerous. They wouldn't let emotion override their duty. "Captain Chen," the Kritesh commander appeared on the view screen, his golden feathers immaculate. "You must surrender. The Galactic Council has ordered it." "Commander, I need to get the Queen to safety. After that, I'll surrender myself. You have my word." "Your word means nothing. You are a criminal." Sarah thought fast. The Kritesh valued honor above all else. "Commander, would you condemn a dying queen without hearing her side of the story? Is that the Kritesh way?" The bird alien's feathers ruffled. "What are you suggesting?" "Let me bring her to you. Let her speak. Then make your decision." There was a long pause. Finally, the commander nodded. "You may approach, but if this is a trick, we will destroy you." Sarah went to the medical bay. The Queen was awake thanks to the new supplies. She looked better, though still weak. "Your Majesty, I need you to do something difficult. I need you to convince the Kritesh to let us pass." Zelnara's patterns showed understanding. "Bring me to them." They helped the Queen to the communications room. She sat in a chair, her breathing apparatus visible, her shell still showing the damage from the poison gas. The Kritesh commander saw her, and his eyes widened. "Your Majesty, we were told you were unharmed, that the human had abducted you." "Does this look unharmed to you, Commander?" Zelnara's patterns were weak but clear. "The rebels tried to kill me. Captain Chen saved my life at great risk to herself. Everything you've been told is a lie. The rebels control your government now. They have legitimacy." "Legitimacy gained through murder?" The Queen's patterns flashed with anger. "Commander, I ask you this. If someone tried to kill your flock's matriarch and blame it on an outsider, would you believe them simply because they held power? Or would you trust the evidence before your eyes?" The Kritesh commander stared at her for a long moment. His feathers slowly settled. "You may pass, Your Majesty. But Captain Chen, the Galactic Council will still want answers. They'll get them, Sarah promised, after the Queen is safe. They crossed the final blockade without incident. Loyalist space was ahead, but in the medical bay, alarms started blaring. Sarah ran down the corridor and found Lisa and Krixtal standing over the Queen. Zelnara's patterns had gone completely dark. Her vital signs were flatlined. She's gone, Lisa said quietly. I'm sorry, Sarah. No, Sarah said. She pushed past them to the Queen's side. No, we didn't come this far for this. Captain, there's nothing we can do. Zearthian biology is too different. Sarah looked at Krixtal. Your people can enter a hibernation state, right? A kind of suspended animation? Yes, but that's voluntary. The Queen can't... What triggers it? Temperature? Pressure? Krixtal's patterns showed confusion, then understanding. Core temperature below a certain threshold, but we don't have the equipment. We have ice, Sarah said. Lisa, help me. They worked frantically, combining human CPR concepts with what Krixtal knew about Zearthian biology. They lowered the room temperature. They adjusted the gas mixture. Sarah physically compressed the Queen's chest in rhythm, forcing circulation. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a single light pattern flickered across the Queen's shell. Then another. Zelnara's eyes opened. Her patterns were confused, weak, but present. Welcome back, Your Majesty, Sarah said, tears running down her face. You brought me back? The Queen's patterns formed slowly. Why do humans never give up? Because giving up is easy, Sarah said, and humans don't do easy. On the view screen, ships appeared, Zearthian vessels, but these ones signaled friendly. General Vexal's loyalist fleet had found them. They had made it. Against impossible odds, they had made it. General Vexal's flagship was the largest ship Sarah had ever seen. It made the rebel warship look like a toy. The old Zearthian general greeted them personally when they docked, his patterns formal and respectful. Your Majesty, he said to Zelnara, who was now in a proper medical pod. We feared you were lost. The humans brought you home. One human in particular, the Queen said, her patterns stronger now after days of proper treatment. General, I owe Captain Chen my life. Sarah stood awkwardly to the side, uncomfortable with the attention. She just wanted the Queen to recover. Everything else could wait, but everything else couldn't wait. 3 days after they reached the Loyalist base, Sarah received a message from Earth. She was being recalled immediately to face court-martial for disobeying orders and jeopardizing Earth's galactic standing. They're going to throw you in prison, James said quietly, as they stood in the hangar bay. You know that, right? Probably, Sarah agreed, but the Queen is alive. That's what matters. I'm going with you, James said. To testify. The whole crew is. You don't have to do that. You went back for an alien queen you barely knew. You think we won't stand up for our captain? Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. Thank you. The trial was held on Earth, in the grand chambers of the Space Command. The room was packed with reporters, diplomats, and military officials. Sarah sat at the defendant's table in her dress uniform, feeling very small. The charges were read: disobeying direct orders, unauthorized military action, jeopardizing diplomatic relations, and about a dozen other violations. Each one carried years of prison time. Captain Chen, the judge said, how do you plead? Guilty, sir, Sarah said clearly. I did everything I'm charged with. The prosecutor smiled. This was going to be easy. But then the courtroom doors opened. Queen Zelnara walked in. The entire room went silent. No one had expected this. The Queen was supposed to be recovering on her homeworld, not traveling to Earth. She walked to the witness stand, moving slowly but with dignity. Her shell had been repaired, polished until it shone. Her patterns were clear and bright. "I have come to speak on behalf of Captain Chen," she said. The judge leaned forward. "Your Majesty, while we appreciate your concern, this is a human military matter." "Is it?" Zelnara's patterns took on an edge. "When the actions of one human can change the course of galactic history?" "I think not." She turned to face the courtroom. "Captain Chen did disobey orders. She did risk her life unnecessarily. She did jeopardize Earth's political position. And in doing so, she saved not just my life, but gave my entire civilization something we had lost." The Queen's patterns shifted to show old memories, sadness, and hope. "My people are ancient. We have existed for millions of your years. In that time, we became efficient, logical, practical. We learned to value the many over the one. We forgot that each individual life has meaning." She looked directly at Sarah. "When the poison gas was released, my own guard stepped over dying nobles to try to secure the palace. It was the logical thing to do. Save the many, abandon the few. But Captain Chen? She ran back into certain death to save one person, me, an alien she had known for only days." Zelnara turned back to the judge. "I kept asking her, 'Why did you come back for me, human?' She told me about Ubuntu, about how humans see each other as connected. She told me about the squad she lost, about the guilt that drove her. She showed me that sometimes the most illogical choice is the most right choice." The courtroom was absolutely silent. If you punish Captain Chen for having compassion, for valuing individual life, for refusing to abandon someone in need, then you punish the very best of what humanity represents. You tell the galaxy that humans care more about politics than people. Is that the message you wish to send? The prosecutor stood up. "Your Majesty, with respect, Captain Chen's personal feelings don't change the fact that she violated military law." "You are correct," Zelnara said, "but consider what her actions have created." A holographic display activated, showing footage from across the galaxy. Za'arthian ships flying alongside human vessels, mixed crews working together, joint colonies being established. "The coup failed," the Queen continued. "When word spread that a human had risked everything to save me, my people began asking questions. Why would an alien care more about our Queen than our own nobles did? The rebels lost support. The Civil War ended not with violence, but with my people choosing a new path. More footage appeared. Za'arthian cities with new monuments, schools teaching about human philosophy, political reforms. I have begun changing my empire's laws. Individual rights are now protected. Every Za'arthian life matters, not just the collective. And this change is spreading to other species. The Galactic Council has been debating the Chen Doctrine." "The what?" Sarah whispered. "The principle that individual dignity transcends species boundaries," Zelnara explained. "That helping one person is never a waste, even if it costs you everything. 16 species have already adopted versions of this philosophy into their legal codes." The Queen's patterns glowed bright. "Captain Chen saved one life. In doing so, she changed the moral framework of the galaxy. And you wish to imprison her for this?" The judge called a recess. The deliberations took 2 hours. When they returned, the verdict was clear on the judge's face. "Captain Chen, you are guilty of all charges. However, in light of the testimony and the unprecedented circumstances, the court sentences you to time served and immediate reinstatement to active duty. Furthermore, you are hereby promoted to commander and awarded the Star of Valor, Earth's highest honor." Sarah stood there, stunned. The courtroom erupted in applause. Later, in a quiet garden outside the courthouse, Sarah and Zelnara sat together on a bench overlooking Earth's oceans. "I still can't believe you came all this way," Sarah said. "You came back for me when you had no reason to." Zelnara's patterns were warm. "How could I do less?" The queen reached into a pouch and pulled out a small crystal. It glowed with her own bioluminescence, a piece of her shell that she had shed and preserved. "This is for you," she said. "A reminder that one person's choice can reshape worlds." Sarah took the crystal carefully. "I wasn't trying to change anything. I just didn't want you to die." "I know. That's what makes it so remarkable." The queen's pattern shifted to something that might have been a smile. "You asked me once if I understood why you came back. I didn't then, but I do now." "Why did I come back?" Sarah asked. "Because humans see the person, not the title. The life, not the species. The individual, not the collective. This is your gift to the galaxy, Captain Chen. Never let anyone tell you it's a weakness." 5 years passed. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Unity, a joint human-Zaarthian exploratory vessel. Her crew was mixed: humans, Zaarthians, Kritesh, and half a dozen other species, all working together. The crystal Zelnara had given her sat on the command console, glowing softly. Queen Zelnara was back on her homeworld, but they talked regularly. She had transformed her empire into a constitutional monarchy, with individual rights enshrined in law. The changes were still spreading across the galaxy. "Commander," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a distress call. Unknown species. Their ship is failing." Sarah looked at the crystal, remembering. "How far?" she asked. 3 light years. It would take us 2 days to reach them. We'd have to abandon our current mission." The crew looked at her, waiting for orders. Human, alien, all of them together. Sarah smiled. "All hands change course. Prepare for rescue operations." "Commander," one of the newer crew members said hesitantly, "shouldn't we get authorization first? The mission is important." Sarah stood up and walked to the view screen, where she could see the stars stretching out before them. Somewhere out there, someone needed help. "I learned something important 5 years ago," she said. "There's always a mission. There's always protocol. There's always a reason to put things off. But there's someone out there right now who's afraid, who's alone, who's wondering if anyone is coming to help them." She turned to face her crew. "Humans don't leave anyone behind. Neither do any of you. Not anymore. That's what we learned. That's what we teach." The ship turned, engines burning bright as they raced toward the distress call. On the console, the crystal glowed brighter, as if in approval, and Sarah Chen smiled, because she knew that somewhere across the galaxy, Queen Zelnara was watching the same stars and thinking the same thought. One person can change everything. You just have to be willing to try.